My name is Vani, I'm 16 years old and I'm a film student. And for my final project for my sophomore year, I decided to make a documentary about Oscar So White. I got the idea for this documentary in my film class where I am the only female and a person of color. Except for Wayne, he's half Asian. So a few guys were sitting in class having a discussion about the Oscars that happened the night before, and my film teacher joined in with the reasons he thought the Oscars were stupid. And somewhere in the conversation, Oscar So White happened to come up. Oscar So White was a boycott on the 88th Annual Academy Awards in response to the Academy only choosing white nominees for Best Actor for the second year in a row. In the discussion, my film teacher mentioned why he thought the Oscars boycott seemed stupid because...
Why would you want any recognition from the Academy anyway? I mean, they consistently make stupid decisions year after year.
As the only black person in my film class and the only real participant in the movement, I felt as though I must defend Oscar So White. I explained that the Oscar So White movement wasn't even really about being recognized by the Academy as much as it was highlighting a bigger issue of black representation in the media. And then the conversation got interesting. My film teacher, Mr. Hyland, said something along the lines of,
"Why do you even need the media anyway? You shouldn't worry or make up your identity about what the media thinks, man. Why is it so important?"
Then I explained that the Academy is supposed to be one of the highest honors in filmmaking. If there's no diversity in the Academy's selections, then they're implying that minority films and minority filmmakers are second class. This all made me wonder if the opinions of the Academy were a reflection of the opinions of Hollywood, and are those opinions also a reflection of society in general? With the push from my film teacher, I decided to create this film to figure that out. So I sat down with the editor-in-chief of the Harvard Journal of African American Public Policy to find out her insight on the media and if it's possible that the media is biased.
You know, the big wigs, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, while they each have their own slant, you know, whether it's right or left, they're run by corporate dollars. So let's not get that, you know, misconstrued that this is, you know, the news as it is actually happening. No, it goes through various producers. They want a certain message. They're looking for ratings. They run off of advertisements. In order to make their money, they have to sell a story that people are going to want to watch. Well, I don't think it's necessarily that, oh, these are inaccurate portrayals of black people, whether it's how they're characterized or stereotyped. Sometimes it's inaccurate, but I think more times than not, the issue is that a certain image dominates and others that are also true are not put forward. And so if you're only ever showing a black thug, because don't get me wrong, there are black thugs, like they're in my family, right? Like they exist. If you're only showing that though, you're doing a disservice to the billions of other black people that are not black thugs. So just there are black thugs, there are black doctors, there are black lawyers, there are black teachers, there are black homemakers. You know what I'm saying? There are other sorts of roles that we represent and that we have in society. And so they should be accepted and also showcased in the media.
In 2015, the North American film industry, including the US and Canada, reached over $35 billion in revenues, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers. So it makes sense that our media is driven by money. And when I thought about it, I realized that if a production company was given the option to produce a story about a white girl that was going to sell to 60% of the country, or a black girl that was only going to sell to 30%, then it makes sense that they would choose the white girl. But that all made me wonder, why is it that the story of the white girl sells? There was a study done by the Harvard Journal of Communications that found in television most African Americans were portrayed in blue-collar positions or had negative stereotypical personality characteristics. I went to Dr. David Reed, a history professor at Bowie State University, to try to find out the origins of these negative stereotypes.
My mother is from Georgia, and I first learned about stereotypes really from her, because she said in her native Georgia, a small town outside of Augusta, she grew up in a tight-knit African-American community where there were still members who, if they weren't slaves, they were the children of slaves. They were the elders in the community where she grew up as a little girl in the 1930s. And what the elders said is, well, the reason we eat chicken is not because we just like chicken. It's a cheap bird, it's easy to raise, and it feeds a lot of people. And so a lot of it was economically based. We eat a lot of chicken because it's easy to raise chickens as a farmer in rural Georgia and other places throughout the South. And so then people begin to associate black people with eating a lot of chicken. When you're coming from communities that are poor, they have to do whatever they have to do in order to make ends meet, including chitlins, another stereotype. But sometimes there's a little truth in these stereotypes. It's just when it's exaggerated to in a derogatory fashion is when it becomes a problem. Because the truth is, a lot of black people do eat chicken. Watermelon was something that was served certainly on some plantations. Then from that, people began to look at the black community and associate us with certain foods. And then they used to poke fun at us, of course, with the Jim Crow minstrel shows, which are very, very derogatory images coming from the antebellum period in United States history, where with these really, really big lips and big ears and really, really black skin, buffoonery kind of, images, those were also associated with eating watermelon, like sticking your whole hand in a watermelon and just eating it, like gorging it, not showing manners. So when you get the early stage shows prior to the movies, they would set up stage productions, and you have something called blackface minstrel shows, and white actors would paint their faces black and wear tattered clothes and kind of walk with a hunchback, or kind of walk like a monkey and make chimp noises, really derogatory things. And they would eat watermelon, they would eat chicken, they would eat grits, they would eat with their hands, they would talk loud, they would spit, they would do things that most of us would consider uncivilized or rude behavior, certainly at the dinner table or anywhere else. And this is in the 1860s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 1900, going into World War I, World War II, up through the Civil Rights Movement. And so when the public is fed negative, derogatory images of black people for 100 years or more, you begin to believe some of these images. You begin, unless you know an African American who's articulate, who dresses nice, who has manners and is respectable, especially people in other, you begin to believe the stereotypes the same way as nowadays, black men are depicted as thugs. People see these images over and over and over and over, will naturally begin to think that it's true.
So, some stereotypes are rooted in racism. And I wondered how the continued propagation of these stereotypes could affect us as individuals. I talked to my friend Danielle Getty and Dr. Teresa Gilliams, chair of the English department at Albright College, to try to find that out.
But when I was younger, I was often with my cousin and her friends, and they were just very different. They were taller, they were older, they were curvier, they were talking some type of way, and they were like, "Why do you sound so white?" And I was like, I don't know, and it made me really nervous, and I didn't know how to feel about it. When you say, "Why do you sound so white?" I think it's because people talk. I don't even know what that really means.
Acting white is a joke. You can't be black and act white. You're black. You have a consciousness. You're aware of your history. I think that phrase comes from this idealization of all things white. So if you idealize whiteness and you encounter somebody who's black, who supersedes all of the worst stereotypes that have informed your ideas of blackness, then that person has to be acting white. You can't just give the person credit for being accomplished and articulate and smart and self-aware. There has to be this idea that she or he wants to be white.
I've heard that from white people, I've heard it from black people, I've heard it from all different types of people, and I don't feel the need to change for that.
The people that use these terms, acting black, acting white, are associating actions with stereotypes. The white girl, the valley girl, she talks like this, she enunciates her words, she's very peppy and says like a lot, and all that. The black person stereotypically speaks Ebonics. You know, they shorten their words. It's slang. It's more relaxed. They use a different vernacular, and those are stereotypes.
Like when people ask you that question, you're just like, is there supposed to be a way that I do talk? And that goes back to social media and society portraying black people as we're supposed to talk in these Ebonics or something like that. Like, does it, that, no. So like, stop assuming that if a person speaks proper, that it's only a white person is supposed to do that, because that's not the case to me. I don't think that that's fair to those people who just speak the way they speak.
There are white people that can't read. There are white people that don't know how to spell. There are white people that can't, properly conjugate their verbs. There are black people that state words that I can't even pronounce. There are black people that are like Nobel laureates, that are Rhodes Scholars, that are brain surgeons. So, but the stereotypical image is otherwise. And so I think, it all goes back to what we're socialized to understand how a person should act, and I think that's just the most ridiculous thing ever.
This idea of acting white comes directly from stereotypes. When people aren't acting like the racist and negative stereotypes that have been cast for them, some people assume that they're trying to be white. If the Academy continues to not encourage diversity, then these stereotypes will continue to be shown throughout Hollywood. The Academy has for too long neglected its power and responsibility to encourage diversity in filmmaking. America is known as the melting pot. Diversity is a part of the fabric of this country, and it's one of the many things that makes us great. It's time we start showing that in Hollywood.